Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel. This is Business Connections Live with Steve Hyland.
Hello there, welcome on. This is Business Connections Live, the program for entrepreneurs, SMEs and business owners. Now, on today's show, we're going to be discussing how to make an impact with your communication. What are you talking about? Joining me in the studio today is Jeremy Nicholas. He's the director of Talking Toolbox, speaker and coach, and all-round good guy as well. It's going to be a cracking show today. Actually, I've been really looking forward to this. Jeremy, lovely to have you in the studio today.
Great to have me on, thank you.
A lot of people come to you. I mean, those people that don't know who you are, the brief summary, the précis of who Jeremy Nicholas is.
Yeah, so BBC broadcaster for many years, started in local radio, then did national radio, then went to local telly, national telly, did lots of football commentating, lots of sports presenting, and then towards the end I did 10 years of what we call and finally news reporting, which is the skateboarding dog or the face of Elvis on a bit of cheese, that sort of thing. Not the stuff that leads the bulletin, they didn't trust me with that, but the funny bit at the end. And then I started Talking Toolbox about 10 years ago, and it's all about helping business people communicate like broadcasters do.
A lot of people say that the one thing that people will hate doing in their careers is actually going out there and doing public speaking. Businesses come to you for advice and to get some direction in what they're trying to get over. If you had to sum up the whole program, shall we say, at the very beginning, what's the biggest mistake you come across from people?
So I think it's when people don't work out what they want to say. They haven't worked out what their core message is. So the example I would give is Michelangelo, when he did the statue of David. You know that beautiful statue in Florence? And it's renowned as one of the best sculptures in the world. And he was interviewed at the time by local Italian television. And they said to him, how have you done that? And he said, well, I looked into the marble, and all the bits that didn't look like David, I got rid of. I chipped them all away. And I'd look and say, is that David? No. Is that David? No. And in the end, I was just left with David. Because he was quite a good laugh, Michelangelo. You know, Michael, I call him. And so I think...
Mike.
Yeah, Mike. And that's what I think businesses don't do when they're doing any kind of pitch or presentation. They just shove a whole lot at you and hope some of it works. And you think, no, that's no good. You need to chip away all the bits that are not your core message. You just want your core message left behind.
I mean, both of us have been in broadcasting for a number of years, and we've done our bit. You were working.
I had no idea you were a broadcaster.
No, no. I was for a little while.
No, you still are.
Quite amateur, yes.
This is broadcasting.
This is broadcasting, but I mean, when I was doing the radio and things like that and the TV, there was all the prep would go into it. And to a certain extent, the things that actually come out of your mouth when you're on the air are not the things that you've probably prepped. It's the knowledge, it's the background, it's the construction of the message. But when you talk to people in business about what they're going to present, they seem to nearly focus on the minutiae of the presentation, how long it's going to be, the storytelling of it and things like that. Do you think they're the areas as well that businesses need to step back from and to reanalyse?
Yeah, because they tend to do it in a chronological order. So they'll think, right, we better start by saying when we were founded. You know, so my business is 10 years old, but I wouldn't expect anyone to book me on the basis of that. I'll go, yes, we were looking for a 10-year-old business. Fantastic. Thank goodness you weren't just 8 years old, because we thought you can't be experienced enough. So, but everyone always shows you a picture of their headquarters building, how many employees they've got, how long they've been in business, and everyone goes, I really don't care. And they just fold their arms. I really don't care. So I always chuck at people, so what? Anything you tell me, I go, yeah, so what? So what? And I mean, it's quite annoying. If I did that today, you'd be really annoyed. Yeah, so what? But I think it is quite a good discipline for any business person doing any kind of presentation or pitch just to read it through, you know, in your hotel room the night before you're delivering at a big conference, and just write, so what, so what? And if it doesn't pass the so what test, cross it out.
I suppose the thing is, though, in the industry that we're in, we see so much information coming in, it's quite easy for us to stand outside what we're talking about to analyse what the presentation is about. Whereas somebody who is the managing director of a large multinational, he is so close to the content that he's presenting, he can't see the wood from the trees.
No, often people do get far too close to it, and then they start using phrases that only people right on the inside would know what they mean, and to the wider audience, they've no idea what they're talking about. So people start using jargon all the time, and that alienates everyone in the room. Or one thing that really drives me mad with business presentations is, they'll be looking out into the audience. Which camera round? Can I go to that one there?
Camera 4, yeah.
I'll go to camera 4, and they'll go, yes, and I was just chatting to Dave on the way in, and Dave and I were saying this, and half the audience are thinking, I don't know who Dave is. Why do that? And it's because when they're presenting, they worry. They want to try and personalise it, so they mention Dave. But I think you've got to use the technique which I call the Vietnam technique. Any kind of Vietnam movie where some American Marines are in a clearing and one of them's been shot in the leg, and there's always this thing, a helicopter says, no one gets left behind. And then loads of Marines will land to save the one guy with the broken leg. 3 of them are killed, but they got the guy with the and all the bodies come out as well. So it's fine because no one gets left behind. And I think that's a good message whenever you're presenting. Make sure no one gets left behind. Does everyone know who Dave is? If they don't, explain it. Don't use jargon. Like the other day, someone was talking about PA. Yes, I was just chatting to my PA. Now, what does PA mean?
Public address or personal assistant?
Yeah, all right, yeah. So public address when I'm a tannoy announcer, and I've been the stadium announcer at Wembley and Twickenham and more importantly, West Ham United. But PA can also mean press association if you're a journalist. Yeah. Or it could be, in radio, it would be programme assistant. In television, it might be production assistant. In business, it would be personal assistant. You don't want to get those muddled up. If you're an accountant, it might be per annum. And people just say PA, and you think, I don't know what you mean. I saw somebody the other day talking about KPI. Yeah, we've had all these KPIs. And I thought, yes, I know that one. Key performance indicator. And then I went to an event the next week, and this chap was saying, I just met this KPI. And I thought, hang on.
What's a KPI?
You've met a KPI. And I was thinking, oh no, I'm just a bloke in the media. I thought that was key performance indicator. And I put my hand up and said, sorry, how can you meet a KPI? And he went, key person of influence. And I thought, you can't just make things up. And half the audience were going, I'm glad you asked that, because I didn't know that. So maybe actually,
if they don't watch any more, if they watch no more of this programme, don't be talking in gibberish, talk in English.
Exactly. So because I've done a lot of sports presenting, I know that 25% of the population just love sport and they can talk about it all the time, but 75% are just completely turned off by it and have no interest in it. Now, so when I was if I was commentating, say, on an FA Cup final, which I did many times for BBC London, GLR, and BBC Radio Nottingham, and stuff on the World Service, I would think, if my mum is watching, would she understand what I'm talking about there? And if not, I would explain it. And particularly if you've got an ex-footballer sitting next to you, former England international. I worked a lot with Garth Crooks, used to play for Manchester United and Spurs. And he would say stuff, and I think, would my mum understand that? Because I barely do. So let me think, what does he mean by that? And then I would explain it. So, yeah, you've always got to make sure no one gets left behind. Cut out the jargon.
So it's all down to the explanation. This is interesting because it kind of sort of sets us up for the rest of the programme where we're going to be talking about how you put some of this into maybe your sales pitch, your presentation pitches and things like that. What about duration? There's a big debate in media about how long something needs to be. A lot of people will ask and say, look, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, because after that my audience will be switching off. We're breeding a generation of people that have very short attention spans. Do you think that's true?
Yes, I think so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good night.
I think people have very short attention, and that's why I'm leaving now. That's it. It's been lovely to meet you,
well,
Steve.
Thank you very much indeed.
Good luck with the rest of the programme.
Glad you enjoyed today's programme. We'll be back again next week. We like the short ones. But seriously, though, we do have short attention spans, but is it not about engagement, do you think?
Yeah, so if you've done something really good, it can be a bit longer. But, for example, I'm a professional speaker and I work a lot with professional speakers, and often I'll advise them on their show reel because of my television background. They'll say, how long should the show reel be? And that, most people will say about 5 minutes, and I will say, no, 2 minutes, absolute maximum. And if you can make it a minute and a half, that's better. Because when people watch a video on YouTube, they won't watch for 5 minutes. You can see that on your Google Analytics, how long people watch for, and they'll switch off halfway through. So if you've got your details about how to book me as a speaker for your event right at the end, then you've missed it.
But the point is, isn't it, I always felt, because I remember when I would be going through show reels for one of the many shopping channels that we did work for, if you go through the show reels, if they didn't capture you in the first 3 or 4 seconds, it was in the bin.
Yes.
But if they did capture you, you would end up watching the entire show reel. And I think that's the thing. It's that moment between getting rid of them and not being engaged and being engaged.
So I think the best thing is to have a lot of small, short videos, because if people then like that, then if you've got it set up properly on YouTube for automatically play something similar to this, and if you put exactly the same tags in all of yours, it will automatically then play another one of yours.
It's another program, isn't it? How to optimize and SEO your YouTube channel.
Yes, exactly. You want to make sure that the next video is also you and not one of your rivals.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure your tags are absolutely nailed on to you, and they're the same in each other, so that if people like that one, they will get another one that has exactly the same tag, so that's bound to be you. But I wouldn't have a 5-minute video. I would say have a series of 1-minute videos. I've just made a series of videos for the Academy for Chief Executives, and they're 59 seconds each. And I went into a studio in Northampton and just shot them all, and they went, oh, that's good. We've been trying to get these 1-minute videos and people kept running over, but yours was 59 seconds. And I went, yeah, well, I know what a minute's like. Because you get, you'll know that from working in broadcast. You get in your head, you know exactly what a minute's like. I learned that in local radio when I needed to get to the toilet, and you'd think, right, I can't do that during an undertones track because that's only 2 minutes 40.
That's right. Never work on a 60s station. You never go to the toilet.
So you need to put Pink Floyd on, or Genesis, or something long. Don't Fear the Reaper, Blue Oyster Cult. You can easily have a wee during that, but if it's Elvis, you'd be racing back and out of breath during the news.
And you don't want to be doing that. Listen, we're going to come back and be talking to Jeremy Nicholas in just a few moments' time. Still more to come. If you do find the whole world of standing up in front of your colleagues or maybe prospects and actually doing a presentation, you find it a little bit daunting, this is the program to be watching today. Jeremy Nicholas, Director of Talking Toolbox, speaker and also coach as well. You're watching Business Connections Live. It's great to have your company as always. We're live here on a Monday. If you're watching us on YouTube, great to know that you're there. If you're watching on Facebook, getting a lot of response on Facebook, also on iTunes too. Thousands of you are downloading the program on a weekly basis, so we'd like to thank you very much indeed for doing that. We hope you're enjoying them. We hope you're getting some benefit from them as well from that matter. And don't forget, over 200 hours of great content. If you're in the world of business, it doesn't matter what it is, everything from social media all the way through to fundraising and directorships. There's going to be a program there that's going to be covering one of those particular topics. If you want to find out more details, or you want to find out where you can download them or how to sign up to iTunes, I'll tell you a bit later on, but don't forget you can always go to our website at businessconnectionslive.com. Now let's look back at one of our programs that we did just last week. It was Jackie Jarvis, the business coach. She joined me in the studio. She was talking about slowing down to gain more time. It was a great show, as always. Jackie is always a good guest on the program. She's been with us a couple of times on the show, but last week, once again, a real insight into how we sometimes need to just step back, maybe in what we're talking about today, stepping back for a moment and analysing where we are more productive. I'll be more productive doing that and doing less of this. Now, Jackie, as I said, was on the show. She said we need to sort of reflect on what we're doing, to slow down, to gain more time. To give you a bit of an insight of what she was talking about on last week's edition of the programme, here's the podcast from last week's edition of Business Connections Live. You're watching Business Connections Live. Lovely to have your company with us today. My guest on today's show is a fantastic business coach. Her name is Jackie Jarvis. Today we're talking about really how you can slow down to gain yourself more time in not only your life, I would imagine, but also in your business life too.
Well, I think basically most, as you know, you're a busy business owner yourself, and quite often what you don't do is allow yourself that time to really think through what it is that you need to do to get you where you want to get to. So sometimes I find business owners don't give themselves a chance to gain that real clarity. And sometimes they get too close to their business to be able to see or understand exactly what it is that they need to do to move forward. Because it's one thing, I think, going in and, like you say, helping business owners to find their clarity and find their way forward. But actually what can happen to you if you're not careful when you're running a business yourself is that you can not pay attention to yourself. So I found myself maybe 2 years ago, I was very busy with a number of different clients. I was also growing a network with 2 business partners. And in fact, what I was doing to myself was I was actually overloading myself with a number of different tasks. I was taking on all the to-do lists of my own and also pretty much all the to-do lists of my business owner clients. You know, kind of this thing about listening to your voice of slow is maybe more of a spiritual message. And when I go in and work with business owners, perhaps we're not necessarily talking on a spiritual basis, but what I am trying to do is get them to be more aware of what is going on. You may be overloaded with and have piles of stuff that isn't necessarily a priority or isn't necessarily taking you where you want to go. So the first thing that you would start off doing really is work out what it is that is important, you know, where you are actually going with your business, so you know where you are now, where you want to be. You know, the thing is, it is, it's a process really, because it's not a matter of just letting go, because I mean, sometimes you just let go of anything, you know, it's a matter of really thinking through what it is that where it is that you want to go, set some clear goals, and then work out a really simple, clear way of getting there. I'm a big believer in, if you can't put something onto one page, then it's not clear enough. Well, from this interview, it would be really nice if you would go and take a look at my book, which is called In Pursuit of Slow, and it's available on Amazon right now. And whilst reading the book, there are some questions in the book that will enable you to ask your own voice of slow some important questions, and you may hear some interesting answers. It is important, if you're running a busy business, to take some time out to gain some clarity and awareness of maybe what's working in your business, what you may need to change, and actually what you want for the future. So give yourself that time. Also think about some of the things that you're doing in your business that maybe aren't the things that you really enjoy doing or are particularly good at, and learn maybe to let go of some of those things and let someone else do them, maybe delegate them to one of your team members, or engage an outsourced provider to help you. Also, give yourself permission to do something for yourself. You deserve it. The business needs you to be well and healthy, so take some time out at the weekend to go and do something that's just for you and something that you really enjoy. That's really, really important. And do listen to your voice of slow and your intuition, and if it has a message for you, an important message for you, listen to it, because you're really important to your business and also to your family and your life. Don't just rush through life. We're all in a rush, never got time maybe to appreciate what we've got while we've got it. And I think that really is important, to look at your business and think, what is good in this business at the moment? What's great in my life? And, you know, what am I really grateful for? Because just taking that time to do that will really give you a boost and make you feel good. So thank you.
Absolutely fantastic show. If you get a chance to check it out, it's Jackie Jarvis. She was on the program, as I said last week, business coach, and the topic was how to slow down to gain more. A really cracking show. Don't forget, if you're thinking to yourself, hey, I'd love one of these programs for my business, or I'd like something like this, maybe branded or whatever, you can always get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live. It is dead easy to do that. You can just drop us an email to studio@businessconnectionslive.com. If you wish, though, why don't you pick the phone up and have a chat? You can either talk to myself or to Linda Bazant. The telephone number is 01784 256 777, and we'll take you through the entire process if you'd like a show just like this one. You can always follow our stream of consciousness on Twitter at BCL Business TV, and don't forget as well, you can watch the program and also leave comments as well on our Facebook page. I know there's a lot of information there, but if you go to our Facebook page, you'll find out more info. But the best place to go of all of that is to go to our website at businessconnectionslive.com. And as I said earlier on, 200 hours, there's over 250 hours of great business programming there that will help your business to succeed and be successful. You're watching Business Connections Live, and my guest on today's show is Jeremy Nicholas. He's the director of Talking Toolbox. More about what that is a little bit later on. He's also a speaker and a coach. He's a member of the Professional Speakers Association. Last year he was the chair of the London region. You actually have got an honour there as well, because what's it, you're number 76 or something, where you became part of the global, I don't know.
Number 70, I'm the 76th best speaker in the UK. That's a fantastic accolade. I'll put that on my website.
I've done really well there, haven't I? I should never shoot from the hip, should I?
I'm teasing you, I know what it is.
Yeah, help me out.
I know what you're fumbling for. I was the 15th person in the UK and Ireland to be awarded the Professional Speaking Award of Excellence. Was that the one you were going for?
That was the one I was desperately fumbling for, yes.
So the Professional Speaking Award of Excellence, should you ever get it, it's unlikely.
Which is very unlikely.
It's unlikely. But what it is, it's awarded for, there's two criteria. You have to have a continued professional attitude and outstanding platform excellence. So those are the two things. And you don't know you're going to get it. And then there's the annual convention every year. And I was sitting in the audience in 2015, and they started saying who the winner was. And I thought, oh, I've done that. And one thing was, this person was nearly a Blue Peter presenter. And I thought, oh, I was nearly a Blue Peter presenter, because I did get onto the shortlist of 3.
What would be the chances of that happening in the same room?
And curiously, they gave it to Anthea Turner. I don't know why, it was a dreadful mistake. And I thought, I don't think anyone else in the room would have been nearly a Blue Peter presenter. And then it turns out it was me. And I went up to collect it and burst into tears on stage.
You big softy.
I burst into tears on stage.
That's professional, isn't it?
So I showed I didn't have a professional attitude or any platform excellence. But by then it was too late, and I had the trophy in my hands. I think they would have taken it away, but I just clung to it. So, yeah.
Great story. That's actually part of your technique, isn't it? You are a storyteller when you're on stage, and it's the humorous side of things. Do you think that's a good technique for speakers to have, to nearly collect stories like that, so that you've always got something anecdotal to tell?
Yeah, so collect stories, write them down, have them in your little book, and then just flick through and think, what can I use to illustrate that point? So, I mean, today I'm just going to keep telling you stories, but it's not, don't think I'm just a random storyteller that just, is like a bloke in a pub that's good. There's a point to all of these things. And the point of that I found is that people actually liked me because I burst into tears. I haven't used that as a tool. I don't burst into tears.
You're not going to do that now, are you?
I haven't done it now since. But most stories will illustrate some kind of point that you're going to make. So I think I always encourage people. I do a workshop called corporate storytelling, and I say, right, what points do you want to make about your company? Right, what stories have you got about that? And they tell me loads of things, and I go, no, stories. You're telling me facts. Now I have a prop to illustrate this.
All right.
If you'd like to.
Anyone think this was rehearsed?
Yeah. So this is a bit.
Just so happens.
It's a bit Blue Peter, this bit. Here's one I made earlier.
Yes.
Still can't believe they gave it to Anthea Turner. So let's just take these out here. So this is a hat in the shape of a brain. Now this I had professionally made by a brain maker. Who she's 81 and she's otherwise known as my mum.
Right.
And she's put a little cross in there, so I know that's the back.
Very good.
So this is just made out of wool, so I won't keep it on too much, but it's like a brain, and you can see it split into the two halves there. And then these are facts and these are stories. Okay, so the facts are quite small and blue and boring, and they won't stick. So people keep chucking facts at you, they won't stick. It just bounces off. Chuck that at my head, see what happens. Nothing. Just bounces off.
There we go.
Chuck it again, try once more.
Could we have a close-up and 4, please?
Close-up and 4.
Here we go, close-up and 4, there we go. And thank you.
Okay. See, it doesn't stick.
It doesn't stick.
Right, now this is a story. And the idea is that, let's just take that fact. So if you put a bit of emotion on a fact.
I like this.
So this is emotion. And close up on 4 of my hands here as we do this. So this is a fact.
Directing from the floor, love.
This is the emotion, and we wrap that round, and you put emotion on a fact, and what do you get? You get a story. Now here's one I made earlier, and now what happens? That will stick to your head, you see. You're going to try and throw it at my head.
I'm going to try to throw it at your head.
There's not Velcro everywhere, so try and aim for that bit there if you can. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a fact. It's wrapped in emotion.
Yes, and it's now a story. That's it. And it sticks, you see, and you tell me something that illustrates a point, And you'll get these things sticking on. I don't know where all the other bits are. There we are. I've only got 3. It's very, very hot. Can I take it off? So that is the point of it, though, is that people will go away and they'll remember, like even for this programme, people remember the guy with the funny hat, the guy with the brain hat, and it will stick. And tomorrow at the water cooler at work, they'll be going, "Oh, do you remember that guy with the brain hat? What was that? Oh, about stories sticking."
Yeah. But how do I mean, when you're talking to a CEO or somebody in industry and you're talking about making their story stick, that is not the way they are thinking, is it?
No.
So how can you make what is fundamentally interesting within an industry but probably quite dull? How do you add that emotion to it? What are the techniques that you would use?
So if they say this is a fact about our firm, and I'll say, okay, and what benefit does that bring, and do you have an example of how that benefit worked for one of your clients, and then tell me about that client, and then and then maybe even interview the client and find out what the benefit was and how their business has changed, and then tell that story. Not say this is what we do, say, let me tell you about this person, and they did this, and then this happened, and that's because we did this for them, and then that becomes a story. Because our brains are hardwired for stories. As kids, if you're good, you get a story. You know, our teacher, when I was in the Glade Primary School in East London, Mrs. Level would read us a story if we were good at the end of the day. And we knew if we were naughty, we wouldn't get a story. My mum was also a teacher, and she would give me a bedtime story if I was good. But if I was naughty, you're going to bed without a story. And I would think, how will I possibly get to sleep without a story? How will that work? And it's the same. So our brains think of a story as a reward. So if you think of something like Andy Murray winning Wimbledon, I always think that we should learn from broadcasting. A lot of my ideas come from either comedy or theatre or radio or television, because they're the great communicators. Comedians are great storytellers, so are playwrights, actors. And when Andy Murray won the Wimbledon Tennis Championships, he was the first British man to win it since 1936, when Fred Perry won it. Now, if I tell you that, it's too many numbers, 1936.
It's just too much.
Yeah, or you could say it was 77 years when no British man won it, but you're not going to remember 77 years. But if I say to you Andy Murray was the first British man to win Wimbledon wearing shorts, then it sticks in your mind, because when Fred Perry did it, he wore long white trousers. That's how rubbish we are. We invented tennis, we have one of the most famous tournaments in the world, and no British man won it for 77 years, or in the era of shorts, until Andy Murray won it.
And is it stepping outside of that box and thinking differently, thinking sort of at 90 degrees, that you're trying, that will actually emphasise the point that you're trying to get across?
Yeah, a little bit, and I think that's why I work well with businesses, because they're good at the business, and I'm good at how to make that business look good.
What about the tools that we're using? Are they getting in the way? The keynote, the PowerPoint slides? If someone comes to you and says, I want to put together a presentation, do you want to see my 130 PowerPoint slides? Yeah. Sorry, you can't quite read this one, but it's all the facts are on there. Have the tools got in the way of the presentation?
Yeah, a little bit.
Do you use slides?
Yes, I do. So I use Keynote for Mac, and then I convert it to PowerPoint. But there's the two big ones are PowerPoint and Keynote, and then there's one called Prezi that a lot of people do that has lots of whooshing in and out, and you can change order and things. People talk about death by PowerPoint. I don't necessarily think PowerPoint's a bad thing. It's just the way we use it. What is bad is when you put loads and loads of words behind you, and then people just sit and read those words, because everyone can read faster than you can say it. So what I would say is a good thing to do with PowerPoint or Keynote or whatever is lots of pictures. Forget all the graphs with about 8 different lines on. If you've got 8 different lines, have 8 different slides so that people can see what it is. And it's no good saying, can you see this at the back? No, it's a bit small, isn't it? If you know that, then sort it out earlier on. I do a lot of stuff with IT companies, and they love chucking everything on there, on the slides. And I say, why have you done that? Oh, well, you see, some people won't be able to come, so they'll get it in the handout that we'll put on our intranet for our company. And I think, okay, so that's a different thing. But what goes behind you on the big stage at the presentation or in the boardroom to a client or something is not that. That has to be simple and easy to use. You've got to think of it like a weather map. You know, if you think of a weather presenter, doesn't put everything up there, he just puts a few things, and then he'll tease it out and say 20 here, stuff, and he'll give extra information.
See, I think a lot of people will use PowerPoint and Keynote, and they actually will develop their talk or their speech using that, and that nearly becomes a script.
Yes.
And I think that's wrong. I think less is more. Do you turn it on and off? Does that have interest? Do you turn the slide so you make it go black?
Yeah.
And people don't realise how powerful that is, do they? So what do you see when you switch the projector off to black or whatever?
Yeah, so first of all, I always think you should have your own clicker. So I recommend the Logitech R700.
Oh!
Just because it's got a little blackout button on it.
All right.
And also it's got a long distance and a pointer, and it's got a countdown timer, and it will vibrate in your hands every 10 minutes, so you know how well you're doing.
So multiple benefits then.
Yeah. I don't get any kickbacks from the Logitech, but I just think that's the best one at the moment, the R700. And that has a blackout button on it. But the important thing about having your own clicker is you don't need to look at it. I hate it when people are presenting and then they're... If you've got
your fingers just know where to go.
If you've got your own one, Kensington do a really good one. An Apple remote's really good, but you know how to do it. But I think you want one that's got a blackout button. But if you haven't got your own clicker, just go to PowerPoint and press the B button. If you press B on your keyboard, like on your Mac that you've got there, if you press B, that would black out. And then if you press B again, it'll come back.
But the thing that I always find interesting about it, and it goes back to the days of the overhead projector, you would put your slide on the overhead projector, you would turn it on, and you would see all the... you try this at your next presentation. You will see all the eyes in the room as you turn your projector on or your slide on, all their eyes will go to the screen. And when you turn it off, you will see all their eyes come back to you. And that's the control of the audience, isn't it?
It is. Now, I've never seen an overhead projector. I've heard old people talk about them. But what was it? Like a bit of...
Be ever so careful now.
Yeah. No, but it is powerful if you can. So if you're doing all your stuff on PowerPoint...
More hair, mate. I've got more hair.
You've got more hair. Then you press your B button or your clicker, and then suddenly everyone looks at you, and then you tell a story, and then you go, now what does that mean? And then you click back, and then you go back to a chart. So it's almost like putting a spotlight on you.
Listen, more from Jeremy Nicholas in just a moment on radio, Talking Toolbox speaker and coach, all still to come on this edition of Business Connections Live. Hope you're enjoying today's program. It's always an insight when we have somebody like Jeremy. Actually, I mean, we're not really getting through the information or the content that we wanted to, but it just goes to show there's lots of great tips here, lots of great information when it comes to the way that we present. The biggest problem is that when we're standing out there, we've got to make that impact. So the question is, how do we make that big impact? That will be truly the next question. We've talked about putting the ideas in motion, and we'll look at some of the other techniques that we can use in just a moment or so's time. Still to come on this edition of Business Connections Live. I'll tell you what we're going to do right now. We're going to go back and we're going to talk a little bit about one of our other programmes. Social media has been in the news quite a lot just recently, and of course a lot of people are sending information out there. They use social media really as their news source, but how do you make certain that it's got that true integrity that it needs? And if you're in business, how do you go about using it for your own organisation, maybe to raise profile, create sales, or at least make an introduction of your business to somebody else? Nikki Creel is our social media expert. She's been on the programme a number of times. She came on just recently, in fact, in November of last year, nearly a year ago. In fact, converting conversions to customers, how to increase sales through social media without a big budget or being pushy. This was directed directly at small business owners, and it was a whole program of practical tips for how to use social media, especially LinkedIn and Twitter. She's written a number of books as well, which are really worth a buy. So do check her out on Amazon, Nikki Creel. Really good books when it comes to how to use LinkedIn and Twitter in your marketing campaigns for your organisation. Here are the key takeaways from the program. She went out on November 2016. Nikki Creel from Business Connections Live 157.
Hi, I'm Nikki Creel, social media coach, trainer and author of How to... I was going to say, I'm so used to saying my how to Twitter for business success. Converting conversations to customers. I really think it's important to build one-to-one relationships with people, and don't forget that human relationships are where your business is, and it's forming that bond. And what I really like people to do is to work out how to show people how to do it using social media as a tool, so that they can actually grow their business through building relationships that are profitable.
And there we go, the eyes were over there. Just at the end, that's Nikki Creel from programme 157. The eyes have it. Nikki Creel from the 18th of November 2016, talking about converting conversations to customers. That's easy for me to say. Now, a little bit of advice as well. Here's a little bit of help you can give us. As I said earlier on, a lot of people are downloading this programme on iTunes. The more of you that download it, the better. Thank you very much indeed. Thousands of you every month are downloading the show and taking it with you wherever you go. But you can help us as well to grow the reach when it comes to the number of people that are downloading it. What we'd like you to do is to leave a review. Ideally, if you can leave a 5-star review, tell us what you like about the show. Post it onto iTunes. That would be a great help. All you got to do is go to your iTunes account, view the programme in iTunes, and up there you'll find just near the top a ratings and reviews tab. Now if you click on the ratings and reviews tab, that'll take you down to a little bit where you can leave your review. So you can write a review, you can give us maybe 5 stars, say how great you think Jeremy is and the advice he's given today, tell us how great it is, and then what will happen is when somebody watches another business program, at the end our business program will also be recommended to them, and of course the audience will then grow for the show, and that's what we'd like to do. So if you can help us out like that, please go onto your iTunes account, leave a review on the program, and then the rest will be history. We'll all be very happy indeed. Once again, thank you for doing that in advance. So we look forward to having thousands of wonderful reviews on iTunes. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest on today's show is the fantastic Jeremy Nicholas. He's the director of Talking Toolbox, speaker and a coach as well. Talking Toolbox, I keep saying it, we don't really know what it is. If you had a 30-second summary of Talking Toolbox, what is it?
So it's a company that teaches businesses how to be entertaining and engaging when speaking in public using techniques from TV, radio and movies.
There's the 30 seconds. How do we make a big impact when we're doing our presentation? You've shown us the use of props. What other techniques can we use?
Yeah, we'll start with something big. So if you think how a news programme starts, they start with the headlines. Coming up, I'm going to tell you about this, this and this. So at the moment, it's all Donald Trump and Korea and Brexit and stuff like that at the start. So if you were headlining your talk, what would you say is coming up? Supposing I'd ask you to do an hour-long talk, pick out maybe 3 things. And it needs to be something that's going to give them something to look forward to, maybe something to be intrigued about. So you might say, coming up, I'm going to share with you 7 secrets of how to make a powerful impact. Plus, I'm going to tell you this story about my worst commentating mistake and what I learned from it. And I'll also perhaps give you a chance to win one of my books. So that then they've got something to look for. Oh, I'm not really enjoying this, but I might win a book. Or I'd like to know what his worst mistake was. And everyone would like to know the first bit. So headlining.
It's the tease, it's the big tease.
Big tease at the start of it. I mean, you keep doing this during your programme, you keep teasing ahead, and yet business presentations, often people come on and say, I'm going to talk for about an hour. You've no idea where they're going. You just know, all you know is the duration. And when they do it, they look at their watch. I don't know why, because everyone knows what an hour is, and everyone's heart sinks, and you think, don't tell us that, tell us what benefits we're going to get from it. So, how would you like to leave here today with a fantastic business plan that's going to earn you 20% more business just in the next month? You know, oh yeah, I'll listen.
Yeah, I want to do that.
I'll listen to that. So why don't we do that? Why don't talks have better titles? Often I'm at conferences and it's just networking. Don't do that. Give us how to talk to absolutely anyone.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting as well, do you know what you're talking about, the title that we're talking about today, for instance. OK, so that's one technique. Is there another one? So we've got big headlines now.
So big headlines,
Big headlines, what else?
Or maybe start with something that's not just you talking. So maybe start with a video. I think a little 2-minute video that sums up what you're talking about. It might be a clip on YouTube, it might be something about your firm, but anything that's got music and graphics that's more exciting than just a bloke standing there talking or a woman standing there talking.
Do you think a lot of people tend to preamble a little bit too much when they get up? Thank you very much indeed for coming today. My name's George. I drove here today. Sorry about the weather.
Yes.
We'll have a cup of coffee later on. Is there too much of that going on out there?
I hate it when, this is a bit rude, but I hate it when people thank everyone. I'd just like to thank the chairman. I'd like to thank our visitors here. You think, and then because one person does it, everyone feels like they've got to do it. And you think, OK, that's 2 minutes gone. And people by now are on Facebook and bidding on eBay and stuff, and you think, you've got to be more exciting than whatever's on their phone in their hands now. When I started, you didn't have to do that, but now you've got to compete with all these other things going on.
It's very interesting because in the London region, our studios are just the west of London. In the London region on the radio, we have a guy called Nick Ferrari, and he's interested in the way he asks questions. He will ask the question, and at the end of the question, he will then say good morning, and he gets rid of nearly the whole introductory bit. He just goes straight into it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a technique that a lot of people can do it, there is too much thanking going on.
Yes. No, there's far too much thanking going on.
I will thank you later on, of course, outside of program. So what about when it comes to boredom? Because we're saying here that we've got the headlines, we're trying to get past this level of boredom. What are the major causes of it? What are the things that get it really wrong when it comes to boredom?
I think that a lot of people put their presentations in the wrong order. So they start by saying, this happened and then this happened. Supposing it's someone giving an annual report of how their business has done in the last year, and they're saying, in March we did this, and then in April we did this. Everyone knows that in November there was a massive merger or acquisition or redundancy. Something big happened in November. Start there, because everyone knows that's the interesting bit. People are always burying the interesting bit halfway through. Put the interesting bit right at the top. Just grab their attention. Have some kind of real wow moment. I don't know if you ever watch TED videos, which I think are fantastic. And anyone that wants to learn how to be a good speaker, watch TED videos. There's a brilliant one from Bill Gates, the Microsoft guy. And him and his wife have a charity where they provide malaria nets because malaria kills a lot of people in the third world. So him and his wife invested in malaria nets, and he had this talk about it on TED, and he has this big graph behind him of childhood deaths coming down. And so he builds it all up, and then he comes to the front, and there's a jar, a glass jar, and in it are mosquitoes buzzing around. And he does what I call a wow moment that just makes everyone in the room just sit up. He starts taking the lid off the jar. And he says, now, I don't think that the poor people of the world should be the only people to experience mosquitoes. Now, this is a room of wealthy Americans. It's a fundraiser for his charity. And he says, I think we should all experience. He takes the lid off. The mosquitoes fly out into the audience. They're all going, it's a real wow moment. And it takes him a few seconds before he says, now, I should tell you, these mosquitoes do not carry the malaria virus, so you're perfectly safe. But how did you feel in that moment? Because that's how people in the third world feel. Please support my charity. And, of course, everyone's writing the checks. Oh, my goodness, we're not going to die. Yes, Bill, you can have all the money. So why don't we put more wow moments in? What prop could you have?
OK, so we go down the route of doing wow and thinking about the props that we're going to use. What about when it comes to making it engaging? You use a lot of humour in your presentations. You're very funny, you're very quick-witted, you play off the audience quite a lot when you're standing there. You sometimes will see people who think, I've seen Jeremy Nicholas, I'm going to do that, I'll tell a gag. Yeah. And it falls flat on its face. So how do we make it more engaging and more entertaining? Yeah,
so definitely use humour. I would say everyone should use humour, because if your audience are laughing, at least you know they're listening. That's the good thing about it. But what you mustn't do is tell jokes. Tell stories and slip a funny line in, but don't tell a joke. Don't go down there were these three blokes going into a pub, because as soon as you do that, you put pressure on your audience, and everyone folds their arms like, oh yeah, here we go. And then it's, maybe they've heard it before, maybe they don't get it, maybe it's not funny, maybe it's offensive. There's all sorts, it's a nightmare. But if you just do a funny line, which is often what I call an afterthought. So you'll say what you're
probably
serious
the funniest
point.
things, actually, aren't they? But only some people can do that, some people can't. That's the trouble, isn't it? So if you have to prep it, how do you prep it?
Right, OK, so you make it look as though you're making it up as you go along, but you write it in advance. So do your talk dead serious, write it out, then go through and think, now what would be a funny thing that might happen off the back? What could I say that would just be funny? And just literally put down a line which I call truth and pain, which is just something true that everyone in that room would think, oh yeah, that's true. And they will laugh almost nervously because it's painfully true. You know, and so
give us an example. So.
Well, supposing we've had some rain in London recently, and supposing you started at an event, you were pitching 9 o'clock in a boardroom. There's only 10 of you there, and the first thing you go is lovely weather we're having, and everyone's dripping with wet, and it's truth and pain. It's not a joke. But it's a common thing that people have gone through. And it makes them think, oh yeah.
It's those moments, isn't it, that when you're having a conversation, there's something is said and everybody chuckles at. Yeah. And we all do it naturally. It's when you're sort of putting it into a presentation by design, nearly, that it's the difficult thing, I think.
Yeah, so just do how you would talk naturally to people. Often I find at business events, people are really funny and chatty in the bar afterwards, but as soon as they're actually doing the business bit, they suddenly get really serious. Yes. And I think that's such a shame, because people are much more likely to do business with people they like, and we like people that make us laugh. And in the old days, it would be like, you can't, if you're funny, people think you haven't got any credibility. So the big thing with humour, you need to make sure that you don't slip into becoming a clown. You keep your status high, so be a wit like Stephen Fry or Jonathan Ross, but don't be a clown like Lee Evans or Norman Wisdom or someone like that. You don't want people laughing at you, you want them laughing with you. And then if they laugh with you, they'll do business with you.
All right, so we talked about how to add humour to the event. What about, I mean, we talked briefly about the length of a presentation. If somebody's going in to do a sales pitch and they've been told they have 5 minutes to get the pitch done, we've now got an order for the presentation. We know that we're going to start with a big impact. How important do you think it is to speak to time?
Very important. No one has ever said to me, I really enjoyed your talk, Jeremy, I just wish it had been a bit longer. No one has ever said that. And I don't think that's just me. I just think you should always do the time or slightly less than the time. So there's no excuse for running over time. I was at a talk the other day and the guy had asked me to do had been asked to do 40 minutes and he did an hour. And it then meant that there was no time for questions and answers. There was no time for the networking. People had to leave to get trains home. And it was such a shame because what's the point in pitching for an hour and then not clinching the deal because the people have gone because they've had to catch a train? So always do less. If anyone ever says to me, please will you talk for an hour? And I'll say, I'll tell you what, I'll talk for 40 minutes and then I'll do 15 minutes of questions. So that's 55 in total. And I won't do the questions at the end, I'll do them in the middle. And they'll say, oh, why don't you do them at the end? I'll say, because it might go wrong. There might be someone with a mad question and then that's not the impact I want to leave. So I'll stop halfway through and say, any questions? Deal with that for 15 minutes, maybe plant a few questions in the audience so that I get it on my terms. If anyone wants to take me on over something, I'll say, you've got a good point there, let's chat about that afterwards. Don't ever let it become a slanging match. And then finish with another 10 minutes of you doing strong. So you're finishing really well.
And that's interesting because a lot of people always finish on the Q&A, won't they?
Always.
So you're finishing on a soft note, effectively, aren't you?
Oh, and you know, if you go to America, they don't do it like that. British business, we just do things how we've always done them, and it's like at some kind of prep school or something with some Toastmasters class. Why are we doing it like that? Just do it like normal people chat. Do the questions because if you do the questions at the end, there might be something that you realise actually what you've been saying is not relevant at all, and they need a bit more. If someone asks you a question in the middle, you think, right, okay, I'm not going to do that at the end. I've got this great bit I'll put in that will absolutely nail that, and then. Or it might be that every question is in line with what is still to come, and you go, that's a great point, I will address that for you, and then they feel like you're doing it specially for them. But you were going to do it anyway. That's the beauty of doing questions in the middle. So maybe that's the one big learning message from today. Do your questions in the middle.
I do like that.
Yeah.
Listen, we've talked about the structure of what you're doing as far as your presentation is concerned, how you should start it, how you should finish it, how you should have the big impact. But what do you do when it all starts to go horribly wrong? We're going to talk about that in just a few moments' time with Jeremy Nicholas, our Director of Talking Toolbox, speaker and coach, here on this edition of Business Connections Live. So it's great to have you with us on a Monday. Hope you're enjoying today's programme. I think it's a programme I've been looking forward to, having seen Jeremy speak numerous times, in fact. I think I only actually saw your keynote the other week, in fact, the one that you do about your speaker's keynote. And I thought that was just filled with great information. Do you find it more difficult talking to your peers? Is that more difficult? Do you think that's maybe an issue that some business owners actually have, the fact that they're talking to their own peers?
Yeah, so I think what you have to do is get that out of your head. So if I'm speaking to other professional speakers, maybe 10 years ago when I joined the Professional Speaking Association, I would think, oh, they must all be really good. But now after 10 years, I realise they're not. And I'm better than most of them.
Well, that's okay then.
So that's fine. No, but you just got to get that out of your head. Everyone's good at their particular subject, but just because you're a professional speaker doesn't mean they're better than me on my subject. I know more about my subject than anyone else because it's mine. And I think a lot of people in business, when they're presenting, they're always in their head, they think, I wonder what my boss is going to be thinking about this. You don't want to be thinking about your boss, you want to be thinking about your customer, your client, the person that's in the audience, whoever you're trying to impress or pitch to. That's who you need in your head. Or sometimes you'll think about the person on the desk next to you at work, and you perhaps be doing something quite sincere and they'll be taking the mickey out of you. Forget all of that. Get that out of your head. When I first started doing radio, I used to not tell my parents when I was doing it because I didn't want to think of my parents listening to me. Because if you think about your parents, then suddenly you're a child again.
Was it that bad?
No, but it's you want to think about who is your target audience and just nail it for them.
I remember a friend of mine going home and not coming out of the bedroom for, I think, 4 weeks after he did his first radio programme because he felt it hadn't gone particularly well. But of course, everybody said it went very well.
Yeah.
And so we never know. We're our own worst critic, aren't we? Yeah,
well, I remember doing a radio show once and I had a very famous comedian as a guest. And we did 10 minutes of chat, and then I put a CD on. Then he went, "It's not going very well, is it?" And I went, "What do you mean?" He went, "Not many laughs." And I said, "There's only you and me in here. Who do you think's laughing? I'm thinking of the questions, you know." He went, "Oh yeah."
It's very strange. We are our own worst enemy. By the way, just a little invite as well. If you're loving the Today Show, you can help us out by becoming a Patreon of the programme. There's the cue. Thank you very much indeed. If you'd like to be a patron of the show, all you've got to do is this going to work or is it not? No, I don't think it is going to work, so there, I'm still here. But if you would like to find out more information, go to our website, find the orange tabs on the website, then follow those. That'll take you to our Patreon website. The website there is businessconnectionslive.com, and you will find a whole lot of information about if you do become it's like being a patron. It's nearly like a subscription, but you get something back for being a patron of the programme. And if you'd like to find out more about that, simply go to our website at businessconnectionslive.com. It's as easy and as straightforward as that. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest on today's show is Jeremy Nicholas. He is the director of Talking Toolbox, speaker, and also a coach as well. Jeremy, what do we do when it all goes horribly wrong? What are the get out of jail cards that you have used in the past? I mean, what are the things, the techniques you can use? I once heard somebody say that if they feel they're not engaging with the audience, is to actually come down off the stage and go amongst the audience nearly with the microphone and present a little bit closer to them. What kind of techniques do you use? If I could see you,
no, I wouldn't do that.
You wouldn't do that. Well, no, they could grab you then, can't they?
No, I have seen people do that, and it's just one of my pet subjects. If there's a stage, get on it, because that's where the light is. That's where the camera people are expecting you to be. That's where you won't get feedback off the speakers. And if you come off, so if you're, it's a bit snobby, but if you're on the stage, you're a speaker. As soon as you go in the audience, you're a trainer. No, I know, and I'm both, so I can, I like trainers. I've got lots of pairs of them, but don't stay on that stage and be a speaker. But so if things go wrong, then I would, if you feel like the audience are just not listening, then you need to have some kind of, like you say, get out of jail free card. So one thing I'll often do is say, who would like to win a copy of my book? And then I'll get someone on stage, ask them some questions, and then I'll give them a book. And it won't be a book I've written, it'll be a book I've just finished reading, and it'll be a novel. And I'll say, and that's got to be back at Richmond Library on Tuesday. And it's just instantly gets them back in the room. And then I'll say, no, I have written a book, who would like to win that? And then someone wins a real copy of my book. And then I'll say, I tell you what, you can all have a copy of my book because it's available as a free download on my website. And anyone watching
So by then you've engaged them once again, haven't you?
Yeah, because people are just watching you. Yeah, like that. And then, win something, yeah. Win. You said something about win something. And it's amazing, even if it's just a book, which will be about £10, suddenly I want to win that, I really want to win that. And it makes them a participant rather than an audience member. Or just some kind of a great prop. I saw a guy the other day that had a sniper's rifle on the stage, and he lifted up, and he was all talking about how you can make small changes to your life, and 20 years down the line, massive big difference. And then he got this sniper's rifle and said if he had to fire at a target down there, he might miss it by that much because of the wind. If it was, say, half a mile away, small change here meant he could hit it. Massive difference down the line. It summed up his whole talk. And, of course, everyone at the break was talking about that sniper's rifle. How did he get it into the building? Which was the Institute of Education in Bloomsbury. How did he get it in? Did he bring it on the tube? That's all anyone was talking about. So just a little gimmick, something like that.
So the gimmick is a really good idea. How many of these techniques do you think will actually transport over to things like sales pitches and things like that? Can you use exactly the same things as sales pitches, or is it just really for keynotes and major presentations? Can you go in with a sales pitch and use these techniques?
Yeah, of course you can, because, well, if it's a product that is something that you can physically have in your hand, just pass it around the room. I saw someone who was doing a session to executives, and they were pitching weight loss products, and they had some of the products which weren't very exciting because they're just vitamins in jars and things, but then they said, oh, this is what 5 kilograms of fat looks like, which is what people typically lose on our products, and they passed around 5 kilograms of fat, which was sort of shrink wrapped fat. Now that had a real wow effect, a bit like the mosquitoes of Bill Gates. People were passing around the squidgy fat because that is what the products are all about. You know, the little jars of vitamins, boring. Here's the fat.
So really the thing to do is to think outside the box. Yeah. It's to think about something that is just going to grab somebody's attention and not be satisfied with just standing up there and doing the talk for talk's sake. You're not doing 20 minutes because you're doing 20 minutes. In fact, the time is irrelevant. You're doing something that's got real key takeaways to it and is actually going to be of use to the people that are listening to you.
Well, I always think, well, how would the BBC do it if they were doing this pitch? So if you think of a BBC story like The Budget, which is quite dry and dull. People are interested in it, but it's quite dry and dull to present the information. So the BBC would always pick a typical family and how it's going to affect them and talk about the shopping basket and how much school fees might be and how much taxes would be if the person's self-employed. And they would interview people because you can't say this is how it's going to affect 65 million people, but here's how it affects a family of 4 from Epsom in Surrey. And then, oh, right, yeah, I get it now. So always think, what's the example? How would the BBC do it? Now, the BBC's core values are inform, educate, entertain. And lots of business, it's just about inform. Inform. It's just logic. And we need a bit of ethos and pathos. So this is how Aristotle explained it. Ethos is the credibility, logos is the logic, and the pathos is that's where the stories come in, the appeal to people on an emotional level. And so many salespeople in the UK just say, this is what it's going to do for you. And you think, OK, but show me how I'm going to benefit from it. What's the real human thing? And tell me a real life story about a person that has benefited from that. And they think, oh, right, OK. But get away from the logic. If you think of Star Trek, I don't know if you're a Star Trek fan. Big
Star Trek fan.
Right, so you've got Spock, you've got Kirk, and you've got McCoy. So Spock is how British business is done. It's just logic. Kirk is where we need to go because he's the emotional one, isn't he? He's the one that always cracks off with the beautiful alien women. So he's the one you need to... And McCoy, obviously, he's got the ethics because he's the doctor. So you want a little bit of ethics, a little bit of pathos, a little bit of logos, but not just logos. That's bonkers. Otherwise, it's just Spock.
When you look back at your career, is there a highlight in your career where you feel that all those techniques, everything like that, all came together and everything just worked on stage? Is there one that sticks in your mind, or are there several? Are there hundreds that stick in your mind where it happens on a regular basis?
Yeah. So, well, let's not talk about the speaking side, let's talk about the coaching side.
Right.
I remember going up to somebody just before I set up my company, and this would be about 12 years ago, at a business event. I was the MC. I MC lots of business events. And typically, if you work in the media, you get asked to MC events. And this chap had been the life and soul at the night before when we'd all met and had drinks and everything, and he was entertaining, and he was the chief exec of the firm, and I thought, he's going to be great. He was boring. For an hour he was boring, and they'd flown people in from South Africa and all across Europe for this conference, and he was boring. And I just thought, that's daft, that's such a shame. He's such a good bloke, he needs help. So I don't know what made me do it, but I went up to him and I said, do you want me to make that presentation a bit less boring? Now, he could have been very offended.
He could have been.
And he went, yes, please, because he knew it had gone badly. And he became my first one-on-one coaching client. And there was nothing wrong with his presentation, it was just all in the wrong order, and he hadn't put enough pathos in it. It was just logos. So I think for me that was a highlight, because then I kept doing it at events. I kept going, do you want me to make your presentation a bit better? And I reckon about half the people went, no, go away. And the other half would be, yes, please, thank goodness, I've been hoping someone could sort this out for me.
Well, it just goes to show you, if you do listen, there is an opportunity, isn't there, that you can get better at what you're doing. Listen, I hope you found today's programme a bit of an insight into maybe some of the techniques that you can use when it comes to actually improving the way that you do your presentations, maybe the way you do your sales pitches. Jeremy, we always invite all our guests to give us the key takeaways at the end of the programme, the key takeaways for our audience. It would like to invite you to look straight down camera number 4 over here, say who you are, where you're from, and to take it all the way, just give us a moment, take a breath, and away you go.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Nicholas. I'm the director of Talking Toolbox, and I teach companies how to be entertaining and engaging when pitching for business and speaking at events. My big thing is that you've got to start with an exciting bit, and everything that I've talked about on the programme is summed up in my book, which is called A Million Tips on Public Speaking, brackets Volume 1, because there's not a million tips in there, that's just to get out. And you can download it for free. It doesn't even cost you anything, on my website, which is my name, jeremynicholas.co.uk.
And if you want to go to Jeremy's website, here it is on your screen right now. It gives you a bit of an insight. In fact, he's all over the place on the web. But you see there, after dinner speaker. He offers after dinner talks, even on experiences as a TV and radio presenter. You kind of specialise a lot in sport, don't you?
So I have a complete after dinner that is just sport, and that goes really well at golf clubs and particularly institutions in the city where there's lots of male people with testosterone. They love all the sports stories, and because I worked at West Ham United, which is obviously the main London team, ahead of Arsenal and Spurs and what's the other one, Chelsea or something. And a lot of city boys at West Ham.
At all, are you?
Yeah. So I do a whole after dinner that's just sport, but I also do a whole after dinner that's nothing to do with sport, because I'm not one of those people that's obsessed with sport. I just like it a lot.
And you also do one as well where you're talking about presentation techniques, whereas using humour in your presentations.
Yeah, so I do 2 workshops that are a day long each. One is called Talking Funny, and it's about how to use humour in business, and the other one is Talking Toolbox Masterclass, which I do 4 times a year. In fact, I'm doing it this Friday, and I think there's still one place left if anyone wants it. It's at the Theatre Royal, Drury Lane, which has the largest stage in the West End. It's where 42nd Street is on.
Gosh.
But we don't use that, we just use the boardroom. But it's just an interesting...
It sounds great, though.
Yeah, it sounds great, but we're not on that. We're in the boardroom, which has a Canaletto on the wall. That's quite fancy.
That's very fancy and expensive.
Yes.
So it just goes to show you, doesn't it? So a bit of class then.
Bit of class, yeah. No, it's quite fancy, yeah.
So just going back to the website once again then, so you can find out more about Jeremy there. After dinner speaker, MC and compere, speaker coaching, media training. It's a good website. If you do tap in Jeremy Nicholas.co.uk. In fact, if you just put his name into Google, you come up all over the place. Listen, I hope you found today's programme a bit of an insight when it comes to what you should be trying to achieve when it comes to making your presentations just a little bit better. And just like to thank once again Jeremy Nicholas for joining us on today's edition of Business Connections Live. You know, a great show as always, and really enjoyed it. By the way, there are a couple of downloads on the website as well. There are 17 unusual things about Jeremy Nicholas that you can download. Yes, he once reported for BBC TV on the face of Elvis appearing on a piece of Stilton cheese and among the blue veins. You mentioned that earlier on, actually. Oh, this is quite good. A question that many people should... So, at his funeral, he would like the following tunes played. Can you remember what they are without looking?
Well, Don't Fear the Reaper, Blue Oyster Cult, because that's one of my all-time favourites. Mr. Blue Sky by ELO. And did I go for The Doors, Light My Fire?
That's Light My Fire.
Yeah, Light My Fire.
You can download that. You can also download his bio as well from our website at businessconnectionslive.com. Listen, I hope you've enjoyed today's programme. Let's see who we've got coming up on future programmes. Caleb Dorkey, Jed's going to be joining us on the show. Jerry Brown, the customer lifeguard, Michael Dodd, Julian Ponan and Warren Knight. On next week's programme, we're going to be talking to Mike Osborne, CEO of Data Barracks Security, and also Linda Bazant, CEO of LRB Consultant, of course, co-owner of Business Connections Live. We're talking all about cyber security and how it will overlap with GDPR breaches. That's all to come on next week's edition of Business Connections Live. Till then, bye for now. Bye.